So there's two parts to this. There's a methodology that Steiner develops throughout his life which he calls Geisteswissenschaft, spiritual science. Anthroposophy is like the name of the spiritual being, Anthroposophia, who leads the movement. But the occult teachings, which are philosophical development teachings, they refer to as Geisteswissenschaft, which in English we translate spiritual science, which really is the same word for the humanities, though. There's Geisteswissenschaft and there's Naturwissenschaft. And there were lots of other people talking about Geisteswissenschaft at the time who meant the humanities. And Steiner does also kind of mean that. He's just also, in the humanities for him is also esotericism and occultism.
One cannot really translate a book by Hegel or a book from our spiritual science into English. You will be astonished that I say this, because you are well aware that spiritual scientific books are translated into English. But what is in the books can only approximately be rendered in English translation. It is not really there, but only approximately. It is not possible to say what Hegel said in English or French. It is impossible. Such translations can only ever be a substitute. The fact that some understanding is possible comes about solely because certain basic Latin elements are common to more than one language. For it is the same whether you say association in French or association in English. Both go back to the Latin element. Such things build bridges. But every people has its own special mission, and it is only possible to approach this through a longing to attain such an understanding. There is no equivalent for what is experienced in the word Gemüt. Impossible to translate into English. Of course, one can translate everything, but that which is experienced through such a sentence cannot be reproduced in this language. Something that is an abstraction for non-Germans is for a German the greatest experience it is possible to have, if he understands it in a living sense. The German language also has the particular property that it permits a certain fluidity. Think how infinitely easy it is to say when something is translated into English or French, "This is wrong." One does not say such a thing. So one could certainly say that the language of one nation is like this and the language of another nation is like that. It is true to say that the English language is thoroughly phlegmatic and Greek exceptionally sanguine. Such things can be said as indications of real facts. The German language, being two-sided in nature, has very strongly melancholic and also very strongly sanguine characteristics. The Italian folk spirit has a special relationship to air. The French a special connection with fluids. The English and American, especially the English, with the solid earth. The American even with the sub-earthly, that is, with earth magnetism and earth electricity. Then we have the Russian, who is connected with the light, that is, the earth's light that rays back from plants. The German folk spirit is connected with warmth, and you see at once that this has a double character, inner and outer, warmth of the blood and warmth of the atmosphere. Here again you find a polaric character, even in the distribution of these elementary conditions. You see this polarity at once, this cleavage in the German nature, which can be found there in everything. End section. When we take the German language, we find that it is of a plastic nature. The genius of the German language is really a sculptor. This must not be overlooked. So we can say in the German language, we have the plastic formative element. That is a feature which is very much in evidence. For this reason, we find many interjections, which are uncommonly characteristic. So it is not surprising that the German spirit is poorly understood, and that little effort is made to really understand it as it should be understood, if justice is to be done to it. As I said, the political sciences, in particular, were strongly influenced by the English way of thinking. But what is urgently needed now is that the different peoples should come to a certain degree of self-knowledge. The German people has the task of transforming its idealism into spirit knowledge. You see, it is extremely difficult to speak of this today, because everything is considered in material terms. Think of language. You know, people in different countries speak different languages. In spite of this, all languages secretly have something in common. This may not be as clearly apparent as it is in Germany and in England, in Germany and in Holland, but it is indeed true. that languages, however different, show a certain similarity. You may find, for instance, that if you enter into the language that is spoken in India, you may not immediately understand, but the shapes of individual words show similarity, for instance with the German language. In the German language of Central Europe there still exists, in the sound shifts, the possibility of growing beyond the sounds and ascending to the next stage of sound evolution. What is the basis for this? The remarkable feature of the German language is that one can find in it so much that really corresponds to plastic art, that really makes up the plastic element of language. Hence it is, perhaps not without significance, that eurythmy in the first instance could most easily arise within the German language, for eurythmy may be said to be sculpture brought into the realm of movement. And it is from out of the German language that this living sculpture can be most easily developed at the present day. In ancient times, all languages possessed a living plastic element.